Does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1899, the Ensuring Compliance Against Drug Diversion Act.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 1899, a bill to amend the Controlled Substances Act to provide for the modification, transfer, and termination of registration to manufacture, distribute, or dispense controlled substances on List 1 chemicals and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone, and the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Bilirakis, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.R. 1899.
Without objection, so moved. The gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman may proceed.
I rise today in support of H.R. 1899, the Ensuring Compliance Against Drug Diversion Act. The Drug Enforcement Administration is charged with regulating controlled substances and manages access to these substances through a registration system. This system is meant to identify entities that manufacture, distribute, and dispense controlled substances such as opioids, as well as to prevent diversion of these substances. And we rely on the DEA to maintain the integrity of this system as one way to stop illicit diversion before it starts. However, a 2018 Government Accountability Office report found over 700 registrants in DEA systems may have been ineligible for registration under the Controlled Substances Act. In fact, GAO found that some of these registrants were reportedly deceased, did not possess state-level authority, or were incarcerated for offenses related to controlled substances. So if we're to curb rising substance abuse in the U.S., we must ensure, Madam Speaker, that bad actors are prevented from having access to these substances. The legislation we're considering today would terminate the controlled substance registration of any registrant if the registrant dies, ceases legal existence, discontinues business or professional practice, or surrenders their registration. And this bill also codifies DEA authority to ensure accuracy of registration and limit the transfer of such registrations. So I thank the lead sponsor of this bill, Representative Griffith, for his leadership on this issue, and I would urge my colleagues to support the bill and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I reserve. Actually, I'd like to go ahead and speak on this particular bill. So, and I'll give myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman may proceed.
I rise today in support of this legislation, which was introduced by Representative Griffith, in order to prevent people who have not been vetted by authorities from dispensing controlled substances. This bill would clarify that the transfer of any controlled substance registration without written consent from the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, is prohibited. A 2018 Energy and Commerce Committee report, which summarized the committee's bipartisan investigation into the distribution of prescription opioids by wholesale drug distributors and the DEA's subsequent enforcement practices, found that an opioid distributor and its pharmacy customer did not go through the appropriate process of transferring a registration to a new pharmacy owner. Failing to contact the DEA appropriately and to verify whether the agency approved the transfer of a registration to dispense controlled substances creates a serious risk that could lead to drug diversion. And of course, I urge a yes vote on this, and I'm going to yield as much time as you may consume to my good friend, colleague Morgan Griffith from the great state of West Virginia. Excuse me, Virginia.
Thank you. I thank my colleague and
the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. I thank my colleague, Mr. Bilirakis, and the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Pallone. Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 1899, the Ensuring Compliance Against Drug Diversion Act. This is a small but very important step that could play a key role in helping contain the opioid epidemic. License to distribute opioids is not a commodity to be freely bought and sold. We must ensure that those who wish to engage in opioid distribution earn the ability to do so. An investigation, as you've heard, published by the Energy and Commerce Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee in 2018, found that the current procedures for transferring licenses to distribute controlled substances lacked sufficient accountability. In one instance, a distributor and its pharmacy customer did not go through the appropriate process of transferring registration to a new pharmacy owner. But the mistake wasn't caught until long afterward. As a result, there was a period of time during which the DEA was unaware that a particular pharmacy was distributing controlled substances. Failing to properly verify whether a transfer has been approved creates a serious risk of drug diversion. This bill amends the Controlled Substances Act to prohibit the transfer of any DEA registration without consent from the agency. By requiring written approval from the DEA before the transfer of registration, we decrease the risk of controlled substances falling into the hands of those who have not been vetted by appropriate regulatory authority. Madam Speaker, I thank you and I yield back.
The gentleman from Virginia yields back. The gentleman from Florida reserves.
No, I'll yield back, but prior to yielding back, I urge passage over this very good bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from Florida yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I also urge support for the bill and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from New Jersey yields